Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of College for YouTube. I'm here to do two videos here today. One's Dark Shadows and the other's Halloween. So I'm gonna do the Dark Shadows video first. If you've been following along, I've been doing a series of versus character, and what they are is retrospectives. The similarities and differences between the original characters from the 1966 original show and the similarities and differences between the original show and the 1991 revival. And I probably just messed that up, but it's okay. There's no editing in this channel whatsoever at all. I don't edit nothing. So, God. And so there's a lot to get to, guys. There really is. Where to begin? Where I'm going to begin is, the courage for the character creation really came during the Phoenix arc for Dan Curtis. His daughters told him, "Hey, why not?" And we got Barnabas Collins eventually. Now, the first time you really see the portrait is in a credits for one of the 200th episodes. I want to say this is 204 or maybe 206. It could be 205. Again, so in the 200th episodes, the first time you really see the portrait is in the credits. Because remember, the credits would always roll in the foyer for the most part. You would see the foyer, or in the drawing room, one or the other. So, and they roll in the credits in the foyer, and you see the portrait. Now, you don't know who it is right away. I'm like, wait, there's a portrait there. And when I first saw the portrait, when I first watched this series, I'm thinking, are they going to introduce a new character? Like, are they introducing a character here? Like, I wasn't sure what they were doing. I mean, portraits in the Collins family were important. There's no question. Jeremiah, Joshua's, Isaac's, Josette's. So when you see this portrait, you're thinking, okay, this portrait's of some is importance, and it is. As I've said, James Hall's Willie Loomis is the first to see the portrait of Barnabas Collins, not John Carlin's. John Carlin's is going to come after that, and obviously there's going to be a fight between Willie Loomis and Burke Devlin, which I've covered in my Willie Loomis versus Willie Loomis discussion. Now for this, there's a lot to get to. Barnabas Collins shows up not in 1966, and that is important because that's when the series started, June 27th, 1966. He shows up in late April 1967. That the character debuts in April. So, and I think that's the biggest, importance if you're really watching Dark Shadows from the beginning or you're not, you need to realize that portrait hasn't always been there. And that's not a knock. That's just, it hasn't. You could say it has and you just never saw it, sure. But, to me, it wasn't there for a long time. Now you could say maybe they had it somewhere in the other part of the house, and that is it could be. You could say that. Now, and then they just brought it to the foyer because remember in the parallel time, his portrait is somewhere else. So maybe originally in 1967, his portrait was, throughout 1966, maybe his portrait was in another part of the house and we just didn't see it. That could be, if you want to do it that way. I give Dan Curtis full credit because he deserves it for creating this character. But for me, for the way the character was actually played, you got to give it to Jonathan Frid. There's no doubt about that. And what I mean by that is this character wasn't a monster. Now he was a vampire, and I've said this before, but by the time I saw Jonathan Frid's Barnabas, I'd seen Bela Lugosi, I'd seen Christopher Lee's versions of Dracula. So when I see Barnabas, I knew. Look, when the hand comes out of the coffin, you know what he is. You know that's a vampire. Okay? When I hear the knock on the door and the door opens and I'm seeing this man standing, you see a silhouette of a man and you hear a voice, I'm going, who is it? And then he comes in, you see the portrait, you see him, oh, that's the vampire. But then I'm listening to him talk throughout, even before, when he starts to say something in the entranceway, in the outside, and then comes in and then stands in the foyer and is talking. I'm listening to him, and I'm thinking, I've never heard anything like this. This wasn't somebody who was just mean or a heel. This was a character who was shades of gray. And I give full credit to Jonathan Frid because he damn well deserves it. Jonathan Frid read that script and not just realized what the character was, he realized what the character wasn't. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of Barnabas, that Frid himself, though the creator, created it, Jonathan Frid, the actor who played Barnabas, saw something else. And what he saw, he instilled. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of the original Barnabas, is Frid himself. Frid being cast, looking at reading the script, looking at the character for not just what he is, but what he isn't. And where Barnabas won me over isn't just when he's talking to, Joan Bennett's character Elizabeth or Victoria. It's at the old house when David tells Barnabas that Sarah's entering my mind first. Josette, Josette will protect any Collins. If you're a Collins, she'll protect you. Again, this gives credence to the Victoria Winters, and where I talked about that too in my verses. Because Josette protects Victoria. But with this, David tells Barnabas this. Keep in mind, this man came out of a coffin. You know he's a vampire. You don't know how old he is. You know he's old. Up until this point, we've only met people who know Josette by legend and name. They don't know her personally. They only know her legend. David leaves. There's Jonathan Frid's Barnabas Collins standing in the old house. He looks up at the portrait and he says, I was a Collins. Where were you when I was turned into something my own father loathed? If his ghost is here with yours, tell him I've come home, and the chains at which he bound me with are broken. It's amazing. There's so much emotion in that scene. The way Frid does it almost sounds like he's gonna cry. He's happy to be free, but he's also hurt that he's alive. He didn't ask to be. Right there plants the seeds. That scene, that he did not ask for any of this. Pre-1795, if you want to look at one scene that says Barnabas did not ask for this, pay real close attention to that interaction with Josette's portrait. Because for my money, I point to that first and foremost. That interaction told me a lot about Barnabas. It told me, man, this guy is hurt. He's, at one moment he's happy, but also he feels like he was betrayed and doesn't necessarily want to be alive, but he's there. So he's happy to, in a sense, to be there. So there's a lot of confliction too with the character. But I think that's the most interesting part. That confliction of that character is what Frid's trying to bring out right away. There's a lot of confliction with this character. And it's brought out to me right there in that scene. So that scene let me know, hey, wait a second. This dude may not be necessarily bad. Again, shades of gray. And shades of gray mean the character's not necessarily good, but he's not necessarily pure evil either. He ain't Michael. This ain't Michael Myers we're talking about. This ain't Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. No. This is something else. So, Jonathan Fritz Barnabas Collins does go about and meets Maggie Evans eventually. And Maggie is a spitting image of Josette. So he takes her prisoner. He's biting her, takes her prisoner. And do I consider this moment evil? I consider this moment a desperate attempt by Barnabas to recreate the life he felt he should have had, but he knew it was all... I think Barnabas knew deep down that moment was going to fail. If you... Look, he knows he's cursed, right? He's not forgetful of this. I just feel he's doing this not to hurt Maggie. He's doing this to defy Angelique. I will live my life despite you. But because, again, Josette's ghost and Josette and Maggie herself is not actually Josette, there's a lot of confliction there too, because then you're introduced to Sarah, and Maggie fights hard. Maggie's willpower overtakes Barnabas. And I think that's a lot of things. I think that's Josette's ghost. And I do partially think that's Angelique a bit. That, like, you think you're going to live your life. How cute. You're cute. You know. But I think that's a lot of things. There's a lot of, there's confliction. Again, you don't really meet Angelique till well later. And I've talked about, in my Who is Angelique, I talked about the mausoleum scene where you hear laughter, and that's when you are really not necessarily introduced to Angelique, but there's something else going on with Barnabas, and you're wondering, what the hell? So when you go back now and you look, you're getting Barnabas. You're getting why he sort of did the things he did, at least to me, in my opinion. If you guys disagree, please do. I'll always tag you in these because I want to hear from you. So to me, Jonathan Fritz's character and the way he portrayed him is so legendary. Those shoes were never going to be easy to fill, ever. So what's the similarities? Okay, though the 60s series is set in its time period, is set in the 60s itself, both characters wear black. Okay, now their period pieces may be different because, again, Frid's character's from the 60s, Ben Cross's character's from the 90s. So in the 90s, you're more getting a fresher set of clothes, obviously. The cane and the onyx ring stay. I love that. I love that, the fact that you got the cane and the onyx ring for both characters. Does Ben Cross try to be Jonathan Frid? he does try to keep some of Fred's mannerisms, but in the way his sort of in his posture, I'll say. Some of his posture, in a sense, is Fred's, but it's also his own. The way he stands, the way he sort of is this proud Collins family member, I'd say that's best of both. Where the real difference to me is the delivery and the dialogue. Fred's Barnabas is so polite and nice, courtly to everybody until you mess with him. Now, you might want to say, well, when he's talking to Julia at times, he's not so courtly. No, that's true. And I think that's where Ben Cross's Barnabas really takes that and turns it up a bit. Even a little, even more so, because Barnabas himself, to me, Ben Cross's Barnabas always felt a lot more confrontational than what Fred's would at time. Where, and again, not that Ben Cross's Barnabas wasn't afraid to have his secret revealed. He was. But I'll say there's times Barnabas himself, Fred's Barnabas, and I love this, he's trying to not be too confrontational to the point of he's trying to not to have people poke into his business. And there's somewhat to that point with Crosses, but he's not afraid to get into a heated argument. He's not afraid to turn up the intensity. His voice, to me, Fred's mannerisms I love. With, he's courtly. Ben Cross's Barnabas, it felt like he's talking to you one minute, like nicely and all this, but there's that undertone of Crosses where it felt like he's talking to the character like, I could kill you. And I love it. I love it. Now, Fred does the same thing, so I think that's where the similarities and differences could blur. But I think the one thing Ben Cross did a lot different was, with this was, again, because the revival is only one season, they're having to do a lot of things, again, different from what the original did. They're having to introduce Angelique a lot sooner. When Julia meets Angelique's ghost, listen to Ben Cross's words. That, my dear doctor, is Angelique. And no, he's not laughing. He has such a serious tone about it. It's like, oh shit. It's like Fred's character, when he talks to Julia about Angelique and original, he's more trying to convince Julia that Cassandra is a witch. Cassandra is Angelique, and Julia doesn't believe him. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with Fred and Cross's Barnabas, where Julia right away doesn't believe it in the original. Julia in the revival sees the spirit of Angelique. Now, in the same sense, in the original, Angelique is in the spirit. Which 1795 story is better? Look, make no mistake about this. The original was better. The original Barnabas, I do think, is better than the revivals. I will always pick Jonathan Fred over anyone that has played Barnabas up until this point. But I do think if you watch the revival, you will most definitely appreciate Ben Cross's performance as Barnabas. I think he brought his own style and feel to that character. I don't think he's trying to be Jonathan Fred. I don't think he's searching for that character. that's what I want to point to something real quick. And I know I'm not talking about the 2012 movie. I think that's one of the big issues I have with Johnny Depp's Barnabas. In the course of a 2-hour film, it felt like Johnny was trying to find his Barnabas and never really did. And again, the tone of the movie doesn't help at times. The tone of that movie does not help him. But there's times it does though too. It's like at times you felt like, wait, I sort of sense some of Jonathan coming out, but it's like Johnny doesn't have his own yet either. It's like it felt like he was trying to find it at times, but it wasn't quite there. And that's, again, is that always an actor's fault? No, not always. I feel, my biggest issue with the 2012 Dark Shadows movie is this. It was rushed. That's my opinion. It was rushed. And it should not have been a comedy. It just shouldn't have. Back to Fred and Cross, there's no comedy. There's tragedy with both characters. I honestly think Fred's, no question, is more sympathetic. Because with Cross's, I was never sure of who he was going to kill. It felt, and let me point something out, what I mean by this. When Jonathan Fred's Barnabas Collins gets out, you hear about animals being attacked. When Ben Cross's Barnabas gets out, he bites Willie. Now, both Willies are bitten. But I love how you see Jim Fay's neck, it's bitten. He's laying on the ground. John Carlin's wrist. The psychology of the both are really well done. The psychology of those are both excellent. Because when John Carlin shows up, he's so, afraid and tormented. When he finally shows back up, and people, Jason McGuire's been looking for him, he looks scared and tormented. Like, oh God. And I love this. Again, the psychology for both is beautiful. Now, with the kills, Jonathan Fred's first kill as Barnabas, his first literal main character kill, I always felt this was an obvious choice. Because who are you feeding to Barnabas? You're not feeding Carolyn at this point. She is going to be his servant down the road here. And you're damn sure not giving him Victoria Winters. God, if you would have given Barnabas Victoria pre-1795, it may have been over. It may have been over. Because she's the biggest baby face in Dark Shadows at that point. She's the best baby face, in my opinion, ever. So, you're not giving him Roger, you're not giving him David, you're not giving him Liz. Willie's working with him now. Willie's his servant. The odd man out here is Jason McGuire, and it's obvious. I always felt that way when I first watched this. I'm thinking, well, Jason's going to die. And he does. Barnabas gets him, kills him. With Ben Cross, the first person he kills is Woodard. I love that because, to me, the first real main character he kills is Woodard. I love that because it's so... He's protecting his secret, but in a sense, it's a bit evil. Because does Woodard deserve that? No. That's where I'll say, and you might say, well, Ben, the way Jonathan Fred killed Dave Woodard in the original was evil. Yeah, with the needle. But here, I feel Ben Cross turned that up a bit. In my opinion, I felt he did a great job the way he killed Dave Woodard. It was there was no Dr. Hoffman. I love that they don't have Dr. Hoffman intervene in the revival to save Dr. Woodard. or trying to save him, where Dr. Hoffman is trying to convince him, come on, don't do this. No, none of that in a revival. I love that because it lets me know, man, Ben Cross is just like Barnabas Collins. You never knew what he was going to do in the original. Ben Cross is not only keeping that, he's turning that up. And that's what I love. And look, like I said, I will always pick Jonathan Frid over anybody, and I do. But I do, again, I think Ben Cross held his own. I think, those weren't easy shoes to fill. I mean, Jonathan Frid is still alive at this point in the 90s. You're playing a character that, though was created by Dan Curtis, was really, really made over by the actor who played him. And I don't think Ben Cross was unaware of that. I really don't. I think Ben Cross was all too aware of that and did everything he could to make that character his. And that is what I will give Ben Cross. I think he knew, hey, Jonathan really put this character over a lot. He made this, though the character wasn't created by him, he created the character's emotion on screen. He did that, Fred. And I think Ben Cross was all too aware of it. And decided to, do emotion, but do a dark emotion, even darker than what, I think Fred tried to make it. I think at times Ben Cross is trying to be very dark with Barnabas. And I think that's one of the biggest differences I spot at times with the revival. Ben Cross is trying to be really dark and moody with his character. Almost Batman Brood-like. Even more so than Fred at times, I think. And I might get killed for that one. But again, that's my opinion of it. I think that I've said, I'm giving Fred every credit he deserves. But I'm also giving Ben Cross his due, too, because I think he deserves it. He more than deserves it. Imagine stepping into these shoes now. Stepping into the shoes, someone playing Barnabas now. Those aren't easy shoes to fill. The expectation alone could crumble, the weight of that could crumble a person, right? I mean, it really could. But I think Ben Cross did not let that pressure crumble him. He really didn't. And that's what I will applaud for that man. Again, there are some similarities because, again, a lot of the stories they're using are taken from the original. Dave Woodard's death, they alter it a bit. Julia Hoffman trying to cure him is taken from the original. The revival does somewhat, again, they do 1795, which is better than the original to me. I do think, again, there was a bit of a difference. I pointed out the Victoria difference. With the 1795 Barnabas difference, here's what I'll point out. Jonathan Frid's Barnabas Collins is a bit jokey. He's very kind and happy. With Ben Cross, he's all too happy and joking around with his brother Jeremiah and picking on him about Mary and Millis. I love that interaction between Ben Cross and Adrian Paul. I laugh every time I watch it. I think that's so funny because it's one of the most lighthearted moments in the revival of the 1795 arc, and the rest goes dark down the hill after that. But because you know what's coming. People are going to die. Angelique's going to curse him. You just don't know, at what point. The 1795, I will say this. The revival spent most of its time, its remaining episodes, other than the last one where she comes back, most of their remaining time in 1795. And they had to, really, to sort of get over, Victoria finding out. I've talked about that, about Barnabas. That doesn't happen with the original. I love both. I think both do an amazing job. But again, I haven't sat here and picked one over the other. This I will. Um, I've told you guys my favorite character is Victoria Winters, and I love Alexandra Hollis's portrayal. I think Joanna Goins did an amazing job too. With this, I'm gonna pick, and I picked Jonathan Frid because to me, if they would have casted a blonde-haired man, who's to say look, I'm not gonna sit here and say he wouldn't have read the script, whoever they had in mind initially, whoever they wanted a blonde-haired actor originally. But I don't think we get the Barnabas Collins we ended up getting. And we got that Barnabas Collins, the one we all love and know, because of Jonathan Frid. And that's the point I want to stress with this. I hope I've covered enough of this to sort of separate and differentiate, separate and similarities. Another difference, Jonathan Frid is Canadian, Ben Cross is British. So, I know it's like really, but I figured I'd throw that in there before I wrap up this video. Let me know what you guys think. I love both these actors. Again, I'm going to give my nod to Frid. Frid's the man. No ifs, ands, or buts. But check out the revival. Check out Ben Cross's performance. It's really, really great. It's well done. He fills that role perfectly because he brings his own style. He's not searching for a style. And often enough times when someone else plays a character, you're going, well, that character, they didn't really do it justice. Ben Cross did Jonathan Frid justice. Ben Cross did Barnabas Collins justice. And that's something that definitely needs to be said. Again, that's just where I stand on it. Let me know what you guys think. I know this video is long. My next video might be even longer because I'm doing a Halloween video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think.